All right.
It's not giving me the warning. Okay.
It's at the very top.
Oh, I see it now. I was looking for the one that comes up like
Everywhere, yeah.
across the whole front of it. Thank you.
So without Ellie or excuse me, with Ellie as our vice chair, without Jill and Shayla, we'll turn it over to Ellie.
Oh, I'm. Free ride.
All right, let's see. Do we have any public comment? No, so, did anyone have any comments on the minutes?
I wait for it, Shepherd.
The grammatical correction
Mhm.
catch.
I'll own up to that. That was the only thing I corrected. There were some things that weren't perfectly clear, but I was fine with the minutes. And I'll move we adopt them as amended, I guess I should say.
I'll second that. I love these again.
Cool.
All in favor?
All in favor, sorry.
I
Close enough.
Abstain, because I wasn't here. So 5-0 and 1 abstain.
Yep.
All right. So next on the agenda is an update about Town Fair and Green Up Day. So this year Green Up Day is on Saturday, May 4th, also known as Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. We're gonna be doing Town Fair again on the Village Green. The planning office will have a table at the fair. I think Energy Committee and Conservation are gonna have their own table to promote some specific energy and conservation activities. This year, we're restructuring a little bit how we do Green Up Day. So we're looking for volunteers to be route leaders, route ambassadors. So Andrew and I are gonna coordinate different sections of road, high priority areas of town where greening up is needed. And then volunteers can either sign up in advance or the morning of Green Up Day and go to that designated spot to get bags and clean up the roadside. Our past experience with people getting bags on Green Up Day, sometimes they don't know where to go, where to green up. It's their first time, they're new to town, new to the program. They're by themselves and it can be intimidating to be on a busy roadside picking up trash by yourself. So our goal is to have more sections of road, trickier sections of road getting covered. Green Up Day is also doing a push this year to cover all of Vermont Route 100. So if anybody is interested in having a Williston cohort go out and, do a section of 100, probably from here, some places, north of Stowe and Morrisville, towards the border with Canada, probably would be a good place where you could go out. If you're interested in that, reach out. But look for some emails from us with volunteer opportunities and then an option to get out and do some greening up.
It was very fun last year.
Yeah, and the fair and the tent is fun and.
Yeah. But people can still sign up ahead for places
Yes.
they wanna go and pick up bags ahead.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you wanted to do a route earlier in the week and wanted that publicized, like, hey, Megan is doing Oak Hill Road.
Once again.
Yeah, once again, we can,
Oh, boy, it needs it too.
we can do that
Do it
usually.
tomorrow if I could.
Yeah. Yeah, usually the half we've gone out and done a route, instead of our meeting, we've done a route on Green Up Day or the week before Green Up Day. So, look for some emails, some opportunities to pick roads and pick dates and times, that kind of thing.
Cool.
Yeah,
And move into the engagement report.
yeah.
So while Emily's teeing up the screen share on this, I'll just give a really, brief introduction to this. I said in my email, I'd probably say it again in the meeting, so I will. The staff did a really fantastic job getting this thing into the form that we distributed to you. Emily has absolutely used every last capability of Microsoft Word to make it look as good as it does, and to read as coherently as it does. And you know, there were parts of our public engagement process that North Star Planning tabulated for us and reported on, and there were parts they didn't, that we tabulated and reported on, like the open-ended survey response questions. Andrew just went into a coding cave, and we together talked about how to decide if answers were predominantly positive or negative, and what their primary subject was and what their second subject was. And all of that is embedded in those pretty graphs you see, where there's, you know, a zero line and there's bars on either side. So a lot of creativity from the staff, a lot of work, a lot of all of us sitting down and going, you know, how are we going to make this readable and usable? And, you know, nice work to everybody on that. I think the other thing the report does really well through all the use of photographs is reflect all the participation we had from planning commission members and other elected and appointed folks in town. A lot of you were in the pictures. It really conveys a very positive message that the town and the planning commission cared an awful lot about hearing from its citizens before embarking on this new town plan adoption. So what Emily's going to do for the most part, and I might fill in a little bit, is just talk through the sections of the report and kind of what you're seeing in each of those sections and how to use them. And then we're really interested in folks' impressions, follow-up questions, surprises, confirmations, just a conversation among the planning commission. Where do you think this is going to help you with your team? I have asked our UVM intern to start pulling information from this into your team documents where she sees a connection. So just to get you started thinking that way. But in those sections of your team sections, say, what did the town have to say about this? If there's something relevant here, there's a chance to pull it in. So you ready to talk structure?
Yeah. You all know the summary, what we're doing a town plan for, gotta have it adopted by August 2025. What we also included was a comparison to the last town plan effort. So we had 2 in-person kickoff events and then a couple of formal public hearings with the planning commission select board. Since that last town plan, you know, the planning office has increased its outreach opportunities, the newsletter, establishing town fair. Some fun photos from our process. So that engagement snapshot, 333 survey responses, 160 idea boards, including the online event, 134 roundtable participants, 109 days that the survey was open, 58 postcards, 38 target cards, and all leading down to one vision for Williston's future. So going back to the vision and values, starting out with the 3 words. Matt, do you want to say anything about these?
Mostly just that, you know, I know coming up with the 3 words was kind of a staff driven brainstorm, and we wanted to put sort of a paragraph under each. This vision and value statement is something North Star Planning does in most of their work, but they left a place for us to plug this in, basically. And you know, trying to encapsulate, you know, the fact that a plan is sort of backward looking, present day observing, and forward looking within those 3 here, and just continuing to impress, you know, what does that mean? So it's a lead into, you're seeing these words throughout the engagement process. What do we think they mean to us? So if I've gotten any of that really wrong, let me know. But it's fairly generic. You know, but it felt good to, under the equitable line, to call back to the adopted town values policy and say, you know, this is something that we're coming into where the town's already made some statements and commitments about that. And yeah.
I see Chapin has his hand raised.
First of all, I think this is wonderful and it's really helpful. And I have some small edits that would, I think, be helpful to, before we put it to public, if that would be okay, which I can share with staff. But you just said if you got anything wrong, to me, the very first sentence under livable needs a little work, because it says across thousands of years, people in Williston have made their home because it supports, sustains, educates, connects, and inspires them. And I think that might be considered a little bit insulting to Abenaki, who chose to live here for their own values and not for the ones that we've listed there per se. And so it actually made me think that just needs to probably be changed to something like since its inception, the town of Williston has blah, 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 rather than thousands of years. But it reminded me that maybe we should have something in our vision and value statement recognizing Abenaki land that we are on. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, Chapin, the intent was to try to include the people who lived here for 13,000 years before white
Yeah.
people got here in this statement. I recognize that support, sustain, educate, connect, and inspire might not have been true for everyone who decided to be here, although sustains, maybe we could dial that back. I like the idea of really working into, when we talk about the history of Williston, the human history of Williston, that it didn't start, in 1700, even in very, very generic terms. So if there's a way, I feel like if there's a way we could keep it referencing all people who have lived in Williston, even before it was called that, I'd like that here. But I also feel that the more important thing is that we come up with a more direct statement that lives in the town plan itself.
Yeah, I think here we could just break it into 2 sentences even.
I was just
Yeah.
gonna say along those lines, yeah, I think if you just said across thousands of years and into the most recent decades, people have made Williston their home, full stop. It is a place that supports blah, blah, blah.
Okay,
In the present.
great.
And that just like solves the issue. But I also wondered, does the town have a land acknowledgement statement?
I don't know if I've ever found,
No.
This is the ideal place to put it in the town plan, I think.
with
If
this,
we had one.
yeah,
I
I
know
mean,
that the town values policy has it, yeah, this doesn't have a land acknowledgement in it.
yeah, so, years ago when I started thinking about writing this plan, land acknowledgements were really starting to become prominent everywhere, and also, like, most of them were very performative. And I really have struggled over the years of thinking about how to write something that doesn't just say, yeah, we took the land, PS, we're not giving it back, PS, we're not doing anything to repair this, which is sort of the unstated thing when you write a really bland land acknowledgement, as opposed to saying, you can at least start with mentioning that there were people here.
Mhm.
I think the next question is broader to the town, like, what does that mean to you? And I really like land acknowledgements that include a call to action.
Yeah.
And so if there are places in the plan, tasks or
Yeah.
goals, that call to some specific actions that are reparative, I think that if your land acknowledgement says, we make this acknowledgement and there are some things in this plan about, that we acknowledge we need to work on because of that, that's what would feel really good to me, whether, it depends on how you feel about it, but.
I think it's also important to recognize that Abenaki residents are still here. And so, but I think I like that idea of the call to action, that, as you might imagine, academia fell over itself trying to get land acknowledgements out as much as possible. And I had a very similar reaction of them being kind of performative. But when they're done well and they have a call to action, I think they are really meaningful and have some really strong potential. So I like that.
Sorry, I can volunteer to work with staff on this a little bit, and I have an example of one that I really like. But one thing that's interesting to me is the goals in this town plan about sustainability and the environment and water quality and things are basically the current inhabitants of Williston adopting some of the values of the Abenaki before us. You know, there is a connection.
Yeah, I think that, and that can be, I think, called out.
Mhm.
All right,
Definitely. Yeah, so like in terms of this engagement report, this is the semi-final draft, so if there's any glaring grammatical issues or something minor like this, like splitting one sentence into two, that's kind of like the level of time commitment we have to buttoning this up. The goal is by tomorrow or end of this week, having this published out to the broader community, doing a Planners Corner newsletter, everyone who attended to the events, letting them know that it's available. So we have a little couple hours of staff time where we could fix anything glaring, but the intent is that this report is in its final form.
One question, and
Mhm.
I'm very hesitant to mention this, but how, like, can you tell me a little bit about the choice of the photo in the front?
Yeah, so the cover photo, I used it a lot in our marketing material, so posters, bookmarks, and I kind of wanted to carry it forward in its full image format. It was taken by, someone at Beta. So our friend Larry Reed, who lives on Route 2A, has a drone. I was like, hey, we have these cool photos hanging above Andrew's desks from the 80s. I would love to have them recreated. I really wanted it to be like the exact angle where you could like make a GIF where they fade into each other. Didn't quite get that, but we were getting a favor for free, so we got this photo. They were taken in fall of 2022. And this one I liked because it had Camel's Hump and the Green Mountains so prominent in the background. So that's kind of why this photo was chosen. We used it on the website. And felt like carrying it forward to the cover.
It also highlights where we have ash trees at Taft Corners in yellow.
Ah, yes.
so it is a picture of Taft Corners, if I'm picking up.
Yeah,
What you might be asking about.
there's just a lot of parking.
Uh-huh.
And that was, it was kind of like, oh.
Photoshop.
Yeah. Which is absolutely the truth,
Or like.
but I was just like, I don't know if it's really the best foot forward, you know? I totally understand your attachment to it, and I respect that, and, you know, so I don't mean to. Oh, I see, yeah, yeah, I don't mean to muddy the waters at all, just that, like, real foreground of parking.
Yeah, when I did the poster, I
Yeah.
faded out and put the
Right.
text over the
Yeah.
parking and really hyped up that mountain
Yeah.
in the village.
Yeah, I like that so much better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, just because you were asking for honest feedback, I just wanted to share
Yes.
a little bit about like.
Yeah, and that's great feedback. So
Town
when
parking
we think
lots.
about what photo we go on the town plan, so at the end of the day, this is gonna end up collecting dust in an appendix in the town plan, and really thinking about what kind of photo we want. Maybe we could leverage Larry Reed or Beta again and get a sweet drone photo. Or a people photo for the real town plan.
Yeah, this would not probably be representative of what many people told us they wanted Williston to look like in 2050.
Right.
But as a call to action, it may be very powerful.
Well, we did a lot of this in, you know, in the Taft Corners vision plan, where we had those straight down shots where you get all the Maple Tree Place parking and all the REI and Hannaford parking and all the.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's a lot of
We
parking.
can like superimpose some houses over the property.
Trees.
I mean, I could do what I did with these and like make it the full page and fade it out over the parking. If we wanted to.
Yeah, I like that one with a little bit more
Gives the
mountain,
mountains a little
kind of
bit.
zoomed in a little bit.
So here's what we did on some photos.
Right.
That's the 1985 photo that hangs above Andrew's desk.
Hadn't changed much, has it?
That's 1985?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Somewhere you use the photo over the Martell farm looking west on Mountain View Road. That's used somewhere in this.
Mm,
Yes,
It has Brennan Woods on the left in the foreground and the golf course. Driving range.
yes. So that I believe is from the
Yeah.
story map, and it's just a screen grab of the video. So when you go to the story map, it's the video of drone footage that Andrew pulled together. And the same footage that's overlaid on the Steve podcast. And this is one of the screen grabs from it.
So this one shows open space, housing, solar field, and a road with no bike lanes.
and a zoning
Yes.
boundary.
Or sidewalks.
And a park.
I think that given that a large portion of the feedback that we got was about task core, like was about the very core of Williston, I guess it's like, yeah, it's a lot of parking, but it's honest about where we're at now, and the
Right.
feedback is about where it's
Yeah.
going, so I'm not seeing, like, it's like, yeah, it'd be great if we're like, this beautiful picturesque, it's developed exactly how we would like it to be at 2050, but like, we're not there, you know, and so like, I guess I don't,
get it, yeah.
I don't see, I see why it was picked, and I guess I don't see it, I
Yeah.
think it's fine to leave, but I also understand wanting to be like, have something more beautiful, this is actually what we have now. And to be like, oh, this is where we're starting from. It's like, oh, the next town plan engagement report is like, oh, you add the 1985 and I'm the 20 whatever, and then hopefully there's another one that looks different with more trees and less parking or more housing or whatever. So, just my thoughts there.
Yeah.
I don't wanna get too hung up on.
Oh, Shayla's here.
Hey, Shayla,
Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late.
it's okay.
All good.
All right.
Everyone's asleep though, so you have my full attention.
So the fabric of the new town plan, this was Matt's beautiful graphic, weaving the 12 required elements with our 3 value words: livable, resilient, equitable. And then with North Star, we distilled those 12 elements into 5 topic areas that really were the forefront of the roundtable conversations, the survey question themes. Matt and Melinda did a really good job writing up a summary. So looking back at what the idea board said, what people said in the surveys, these 2 pages, or 3, little over 2 pages summarize what the common themes were.
Yeah, so the intent in providing these is partially that someone who doesn't have a lot of time or won't spend a lot of time on this could basically read this far and at least get a snapshot of what our engagement had to say about these topic areas in a really, really broad sort of way.
Yeah, so in terms of economy, people value the mix of businesses. They see the relationship between housing, affordability and availability, and employment, and looking to find a balance between large and small businesses. Homes and people, heard a lot of feedback about appreciating the close-knit and engaged community, appreciating the convenience of its location, and then the concern about housing diversity, housing affordability, the housing life cycle of people being able to move into smaller homes later in the life and having smaller homes for young families. And then one of the survey questions was about that housing trust fund. So should the town fund it even if it results in an increase of taxes? And there was more people disagreed than agreed. Energy environment, so people value our open space, farmland, land and habitat. They value the parks. They see the need for more renewable energy and efficiency, things like solar panels, EV charging. reducing the reliance on cars for transportation, shifting away from fossil fuels. And people said that they would support, energy efficiency and solar, generation. Transportation and mobility, so a lot of comments about, there's some paths and sidewalks and they're good, but there's this need for greater connectivity, especially connectivity between existing neighborhoods. Looking for ways to have transportation that's more reliable, more frequent, to provide public transportation access, beyond just the 2 GMT routes, looking for more access. And this question was I think our third, there were 3 funding questions. And this one, 66% agreed. So the difference between people that agreed and disagreed, this had the biggest difference, and most people would support this. Facilities, parks, and programs, everybody loves the school, loves our parks, or not the school, loves the library, which is near the school. And they love the Parks and Rec program. Do note that this process was somewhat concurrent with the town manager's library and community center scoping study. So I think a lot of the conversations we heard at the roundtables and that we saw, especially in those open-ended survey results, were definitely a continuation of that community center discussion and the need for community gathering space.
Can I just point out that that has been such a strong message for like at least the 15 years that I've been involved, and so I agree that we have to look for, make sure that the results are in line with what the community feels without sort of distracting potential bias coming in from Eric's project, but at the same time, like we've just heard this over and over again, so I wouldn't want to discount it too much.
Right.
The other sections I noticed had that like reported on that spread of like, would you want to see this if it increases your taxes? But I noticed that section didn't have it. Is that information that's available? Like facilities and services, like basically improvement on facilities, like for parks and paths, like yes, 66 people supported improving them even if it increased taxes.
I think we
Did we
not
have it or
ask
did we
that,
not have-
we didn't
okay.
ask that question on this one.
Right.
Cause it was so concurrent with, or it was too broad or.
Yeah, we had to prioritize how many questions we asked, hoping that people would go all the way to
Cool.
the end. And we also knew there was only gonna be, as we saw in the comments, some of the open-ended comments, so much tolerance for these tax questions.
Yeah.
There was actually one comment that was very upset that we were asking such a thing. Like basically saying, you're trying to trick me into saying I want to be taxed more. And it was like, well, no, it's just willingness to pay as a.
Yeah.
And we don't know who you are.
It's you.
Yeah, Andrew, do you want to speak to the overview of the other survey questions since you were in that coding cave the most?
I can, yes. Yeah, I think that generally the responses for the open-ended questions that were, they were more open-ended, were more varied. And we saw some very positive comments, thanking staff, thanking the planning commission. We saw some more negative comments, I think specifically, was it the last question? Is there anything else you want to tell us? Forgetting what the exact one is, but there was one that was basically asking about looking for feedback, and that had a lot of more negative and more constructive feedback.
Oh, was it, something like, I thought there was something like, what's the one thing that Williston needs
Yeah.
or something? Or-
Yeah.
I don't know.
And so I think that it's helpful to see what people think of when they have that open, what changes are.
Are you most happy?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we saw a wider array of answers there, and I think too it was challenging to code each answer, and I would encourage you, if you have the time, to kind of skim through those questions, because
56 pages.
some of them are pretty long, and some of them are really thoughtful. Some of them are very negative, and I was a bit bummed reading them. Which you'll have that will happen.
Was there thematic consistency around the really negative ones, or was it kind of all over the map?
I think it was thematic. I think that for the most part, the graphs might kind of reflect that. And then the other section was a common theme between all of those questions. And generally, they were coded as other because they really didn't have a theme. It was more just generally negative responses.
So what were the negative things about, like, was there any commonality, or were they all over the map?
I think that taxes was a response. I think that general development was a response. Sometimes it was hard to code exactly, were they talking about housing, were they talking about commercial development? Trying to
Maybe
think
traffic.
Traffic is a common one. Noise was one that, I mean, wasn't a huge number, but it was interesting that was what some people chose specifically. Yeah, well, if you wanted to go back to the graph, I might refresh my memory.
Yeah. There's also a summary somewhere that just points out that many of the strictly negative comments were either about growth or about town government.
And
Town
there's-
government was
Yeah,
that was a theme.
I mean,
Shocking.
I think I read a fair enough number about, sort of the relationship between growth and town government, and that there was some impropriety going on or special favors being handed out to certain developers, et cetera. Nothing you haven't heard before if you read Front Porch Forum, but there are folks who just, I think, have felt that way for a very long time and chose to express it here.
I think the other hard thing to do was to separate out comments that were kind of fit my negative definition, but were relatively constructive, versus comments that were pretty malicious in their intent.
Yeah, so we didn't do a mean, not mean
Right.
split.
Yeah.
But it affects the way you read that comment, and it affects the point Chapin made publicly a few weeks ago about, the planning commission is hearing all of you. And that includes those of you we might hear you, but we might hear a lot of other people saying something different. And one of my hopes is that some of the people who did make some pretty, negative comments, might actually pick this thing up and read it and see that there is some numerical categorization going on, and sort of see where they fall on that. And not so that they feel ashamed, but it might be surprising to some of those folks that there were people who said positive things about growth, or positive things about development, or the economy, or positive things about town government. So it gives you, the planning commission, context around those things. I think all of us on the staff, getting ready to work on this, did the absolute worst thing you can do and went and just read the comments from the survey without looking at anything else. And you can really spiral out doing that. And when you see it all contextualized like this, it's much more productive.
I'm gonna scroll through the dot maps, but we're still kind of in that overview section. So the dot maps also didn't tell us anything too groundbreaking. People feel unsafe walking and biking on the busier corridors, particularly Mountain View Road and near the 2-2A intersection.
I thought it was interesting, though, that there was significant correlation between the dot maps that mattered. I mean, they all matter, but the ones that were relevant to the questions at hand. For example, that one, where do you not feel safe, and what we saw appear on the dot maps. I mean, there were very strong correlations there.
Oh, these are scans of the dot maps you saw at the round tables, just all of the sessions in one map.
And an
And-
online.
And
doc.
the survey, so this
Yeah.
is But right, the survey didn't pull things dramatically away from what we were
No,
seeing in the
no.
live sessions.
Right, driving, had fewer dots, mostly focused around Taft Corners. As well as up along Route 2A near Mountain View Road. Where people wanna see change in investment, so. This is in the growth center area, most dots are skewed towards the western side of Route 2A, some dots in the village. And a couple outliers, near Lake Iroquois, couple dots at Williston Woods, Catamount. Where people wanna see protected and preserved, so a lot of these dots correlate with existing conserved areas, so. Catamount Community Forest, it's protected and preserved, so I think a lot of people. Either weren't aware of that or wanna see that maintained in the future, so kind of tread the course on keeping these places protected. There is a cluster of dots near, Mountain View Road and, Old Stage Road, the Glazer property, so thinking about the Glazer specific plan that was happening concurrently to this process as well.
There's a bunch of that on the golf course too, I'm like.
And yeah, some of it might be on the golf course, it's all kind of up around there, yeah.
Okay,
Basically those three big remaining parcels, Glazer, Martell, and the golf course.
okay.
Where people wanna see new housing in town. Mostly focused in the growth center. Very few dots and in fact none like on Route 2 in the village. Most are focused, towards the growth center with a couple rural outliers.
It's interesting to me if you go back to this, that most of the if you like look at the intersection of 2 and 2A, more of them are south of 2 than are north of 2,
Yeah,
which I thought was fascinating.
so it's like more Cottonwood and Taft Corners Park and the open fields near Harvest Lane and
Yeah.
stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great observation.
Yes, that's between 2 and 89.
Yeah,
Mhm.
People's favorite place, so Catamount and Five Tree Hill are the clear outliers here with the most stars. Some dots in Taft Corners and in Tahana's Point, a lot of them are focused on that southeastern quadrant, so south of Route 2, kind of the Maple Tree Place Cottonwood area. A lot of these dots track along near Windswept Farm, the multi-use path corridor around Williston Central School. So we did postcards and at various pop-up events, we got 58 total, including 16 from youth. And then parket cards were at the roundtable events only, folks had more things to say. I tried to pick a parket card and a postcard that really encapsulated, looking at all the results, which one kind of meets them all, and this one's my favorite. Slow down growth, keep up with adequate infrastructure, create more gathering community spaces, keep Williston affordable, increase affordable housing.
But slow down growth.
But slow down growth, I feel like this one really encapsulated
It does.
some of the internal friction points
Yeah.
that we're
That's a
feeling,
really
yeah.
good choice.
So going back up to, a reminder on the timeline, so, just about 10 months ago, we launched this whole project. We did those events in the fall. Our participation, so we had 118 attendees and then 16 additional facilitators, so some of you guys, some of other boards and committees, even some town staff jumped in and helped us with our online event engagement, facilitation. We included our engagement methodology, so as you go through those survey questions, some things were a fully quantitative question, like the Likert scale, do you agree or disagree? Yeah, so fully quantitative questions. There were some partially quantitative questions where it was a multiple choice or check all that apply and someone could fill in an other. So we looked at that others like, okay, are they just putting a qualifier on some, for example, that housing question, someone was like, I'm blessed to have no issues with my housing. It's like, okay, well, that's a qualifier. You're kind of answering the question as NA. So we would do that. And then the fully open-ended responses were Andrew and the coding cave thinking about main theme, secondary theme, positive, negative. And then the dot map.
And it's just worth pointing out real quick that when you work through the report, we have these icons that reference what source the particular information came from. So it takes a little while to remember that, but it really does help you track it if you keep that in mind.
Yep, good point. Those three icons for roundtables, survey, and dot maps.
That was helpful. I read through the whole thing last night and that really did have an effect. So that's
Okay.
excellent.
And that's kind of the methodology that we're thinking about with the town plans. So thinking about like where required element or, hey, this idea is like a common theme in all the chapters, using some icons to help guide reading the town plan. Yeah, and so I guess 7:45, I'm not sure how much you want me to go into each of the 5 areas. If you want me to give a brief overview about one and then we talk about it, I'm open to how you guys want to go through it.
Might be helpful just to go through one of them, because I'm thinking that the way you kind of describe it and walk us through it might be helpful as we start to think about writing chapters and collating and assembling data for our report.
So one of the 5 areas,
Yeah.
which one do you want to do?
Pick one.
Let's just do economy and jobs.
Okay, all
since
right,
it's right
sounds
there.
good. Yeah, so what do people value? A lot of people value local businesses, including things like healthy living, variety of businesses. Convenience, convenience was a really big thing we heard about. Adequate parking, accessibility, proximity, as well as jobs. The challenges, the biggest challenge at the roundtables people saw was housing, and development, things like infrastructure and roads, inclusionary zoning, welcoming businesses without encouraging small sprawl, and balancing development, and transportation. And for all these categories, there are other topics. We just list in bold font these top 3.
Right, but there's always that paragraph down below that sort of gives you the kitchen sink of the lower percentage things that we also heard, so.
Yeah, so people at the roundtables, their priorities to address these challenges would be balancing business development, so thinking about using existing commercial spaces, supporting independent stores and restaurants, encouraging local businesses and chains, improving transportation, and improving affordable housing. In terms of the number 1 priority, when you look at all of the priorities, 41% said balanced business development, and that was a clear winner, where number 2 is 17%, a little less variability with the number 1 priority. So 29% said economic diversity, 24% said housing, thinking about affordable housing, and transportation. Came in with 7%. Survey responses, so people would like to see pretty much the same thing in Taft Corners as the village, just different levels. Unique small businesses and shops, public gathering space, and restaurant and cafes. I do note that when I was tabulating those other responses in the village, 6% said nothing, keep it as it is. Fewer people said nothing in Taft Corners, that were 2%. And those responses that didn't want anything in Taft Corners were kind of leaning towards like, well, it's already built out, like what more could you do there? With all these questions, I want to note that we do include the response rate. So how many of the 333 responded? Some questions have more. And then I note for these check all and apply questions. For example, there were 3.7 selections per respondent on average for Taft Corners. And then 2.8 selections per respondent in Village. So how many boxes did people click on average?
Huh.
Challenges to working in Williston. So commute and traffic was the top choice, selected by 14%, followed by wages and limited professional opportunities tied. People who work in Williston but don't live here, why not? 68% said housing is not affordable, and then followed by housing is not available. A small fraction of the respondents, 8%, don't live or work. And some of these questions about working in Williston or owning and running a business, you'll see that they have 8%, 9%, and 26% response rate. So see, these are some of the questions that had the lowest response rate. So it's a smaller pool of people that we're looking at. What people like about working in Williston, so that convenient location, we heard that in the roundtables around economy and jobs, and convenience comes up as a reoccurring theme quite a bit. That people like it for working in Williston, and they like the convenient location if they own or run a business here. That's it for that one topic area. Before we go any further, I do want to just touch on those open end or not open end statistical survey questions, whatever you want to call them, but about the people who responded. So of the respondents, 79% said that they just live in Williston, and then very few of the people that took the survey live and work or run a business, and very few, just 3%, just visit Williston, so they don't live here or don't work here. In terms of the survey respondents who live in Williston, about 36% have lived here for more than 20 years, and about a quarter have lived here for less than 5.
That was really interesting to me.
Mhm.
It's
What a
such a
split.
split,
Mhm.
right? Like, also that, there's another one that was kind of like, oh, the, how old are you was also an interesting
It
split.
sure was.
It like corresponded with the how long have you lived here? It's like, oh, there
Yeah.
were waves, it
Yeah.
came in waves.
Exactly.
And you could see the waves.
Yeah. It might be interesting to, yeah, you know, do this for this report, but it would be interesting to get the demographics for the,
Yeah.
and we would get a sense of
See if it-
who responded to
Yeah.
the survey and everything.
I did actually look at age groups, in relationship to the survey respondents, and it's, except I can't remember, I think it was definitely not representative of the.
Oh, yeah, no, and I wouldn't expect it to be, but it would,
It
it's
was,
kind of interesting
it was
how,
skewed toward the younger, like over representation of the.
So like maybe folks who retired had a higher response rate, and then it was like younger people in general, and that's why there was a gap. If I'm tracking with what you're saying.
Well, no, I
Okay.
don't know, I mean, there was also an overrepresentation of retired people who did the survey too, so. Less representation among the youngest age group there. So, less proportionate.
Yeah, so 57% were between 35 and 64, 29% above 65, and 14% were 34 and younger. Where people work, 27% work from home. Some work outside, elsewhere in Chittenden County, and then about a quarter are retired or not employed.
wait, but
I was surprised by that.
that makes out,
19% elsewhere in Vermont. Oh, wait, no,
Is there-
in
is there a-
Williston, 19.
Oh, yeah, people who work in Williston, 19%.
Cause we just had the top 3 displayed.
Yeah, we
so-
just displayed the top 3.
oh, okay. I feel like that one would actually be really valuable to know how many people live and work in Williston of these respondents.
Yeah,
Even though
I
it's
can,
not one of the top three.
I have a lot of white space on the right side of that page where I can make that work.
We will also, for whatever it's worth, pull that from the 2020 census data for the actual plan.
Yeah.
It could be totally different by 2024.
So that is also another thing, like, we might have census data, but they might be totally outdated with the migration pattern that we saw
Yeah.
currently.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the census also updates constantly. It's not just a 10-year thing.
Yeah,
The
we should-
American Community Survey is constant updates.
Yeah, I would have to look
Pretty
at
accurate.
where we are on that cycle for,
They're publishing stuff all the time, so it should be, I don't know exactly what is published, but
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because it used to be like you'd get a big dump on the third and seventh year out
No,
from the,
they've smoothed it out a lot. It's actually constant dribble.
I mean, it's all coming from a model anyway, right? So,
No, they come
Some
from the
sampling.
ACS's longitudinal panels of actual respondents.
okay, same respondents.
They change it so that over time, like, they'll have like a 3-year panel. And after the 3 years, a third of the people
Okay.
pass off
they
and
roll
then
it.
a third new people come in. And they do that ongoing. So it's actually really quite accurate.
Yeah, we'll definitely be grabbing all of that
Yeah.
plan, so.
Vehicles, so this was a numeric short answer where people could type it in, and the most anybody said was 5 vehicles. While about 56% of respondents said that they have 2 vehicles in their household. So 100% of the survey respondents answered the question, what type of home do you live in? And 77% said single family home. So when you think about that question about what kind of homes do you want to see built in Williston, which is a ranked choice question.
Yeah.
77% of respondents live in a single family home and they want to see
More
more single family homes. But when we looked at that question as well, and that's in that homes and people question, and I'm gonna add in those rankings, there wasn't a lot of gap between the top 3 choices, so they were all very closely ranked. So while a lot of people did choose single family homes, slightly fewer chose multifamily or duplexes. So it's not like a single family was won the race by a lot of points or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. I feel like nothing that was said was too groundbreaking, at least for me personally, in terms of, what people wanted, people value, for example, in energy and environment, conservation, open space, renewable energy. They see the challenges as renewable energy, transportation, stormwater. And then want to think about, town's priorities, energy, shifting away from fossil fuels, lower emissions, climate resilience, conservation, and transportation.
Can I ask a sort of a formatting question? When you have the priorities, if you scroll up a little bit, on this page. So, I'm curious what the difference is because you, right at the top before, if you scroll up a tiny bit more, it says, what should the town's priorities be to address these challenges? And then the next one is what should be the town's #1 priority? And across the board, they're often kind of different. And I just don't understand what each thing is reporting and why the difference.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that goes back to the idea boards.
And
So these are coming from the same data collection method, right? They're both coming from the,
yeah, so
Right.
like
In-person
each
stuff.
group listed a bunch of different priorities.
okay.
And then they had to pick one out of
One,
that
yeah, I
list.
remember that, yeah.
Mhm.
and so the top set of percentages as
I
a
see.
tabulation
Okay.
from there.
Right.
And the one priority. So unfortunately, we use the word priority both
Yeah.
times.
Well, I'm just wondering if you could explain it just a tiny bit and so that we understand the two different reporting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like one is in a,
Yeah.
like, what is the difference between those two things, right?
Right, so when we go to the engagement summary, and we can maybe make this a bit more clear. So each topic had an idea board with these questions. What do you value most? What are the biggest challenges? What should the town's priorities be? What should be the town's number one priority? And maybe we drop that roundtable icon next to these to help
Yeah.
put those two, link those two together.
I think maybe even just one or two words in the, so if you go back to one of those places where they're both on the same page. Yeah, this, maybe in the beginning of the top one, that where you're describing, I'll just say something like, this is a summary of all the priorities that were listed. And then in the next one, say, this is what what groups, said their number one priority was. Just so you have a sense of like, okay, this is the full field of
mhm,
things that people said, and then this one is the ones that they really narrowed down on. I feel like it would be a little easier to interpret.
So should we say that the top is more like a theme and the bottom is more like very
Well, it's the
specific
full
question?
field, right?
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
full field of answers.
Yeah.
And
It's
what
like a-
goes to the top numerically, rather than what people chose as the number one in
right,
their groups.
It was like the first one was like, if you could do everything and anything, throw everything at it, and then it was like, you gotta only pick one.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
So the number one priority is a tabulation of 36 or 32 groups across 6 events could only pick one thing.
Right,
Here's all those
Yeah.
Enough
32
above
groups
it.
tabulated.
yeah.
yeah, I think we can provide that context
Yeah.
there.
I think
And
it'll just be helpful because it's like, okay, well, why do we have this set of priorities and
Yeah.
this set of priorities?
And I don't wanna overcomplicate it, but you folks probably remember that, when we did the number one, we had the little consensus bar on the bottom.
Yeah.
And there often was not a lot of consensus on what the group decided to put there. It was intentionally hard to do that. Which is, I think, partially also why you see the difference is when you let people pick everything, there's a little more consensus or agreement, and when you really make them choose, sometimes they're landing 51% over here and 49% over there, and, yeah, it's almost just as interesting because you can really pick up sort of the vibe of each table group by looking back at the cards and see how they got to that bottom line a little bit. So that might be another interesting,
Yeah.
way to look at it.
Yeah, it would be interesting if, like, I bet some groups kind of picked as their top priority, something that was kind of neutral or more in the middle. Whereas other groups may have all been kind of more aligned and gone for like the radical thing or something like that, right? It would be kind of, I mean, that's way too much detail probably, but.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things is just like you can read the first 7 or 8 pages of this and get a very general idea of what happened, and then you can go read the rest of the report, is this does come with this gigantic appendix, 491 pages originally, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
But you can go deeper and deeper and deeper into it if you want to, and there may be times when you're drafting a section where you say, oh, if I could screenshot that piece of that one board from that one night, this gives you a way to find that and pull that in. And definitely this material's all fair game, to refer to in the plan, but also to use and to use it to illustrate things that came out during public engagement.
And that massive appendix will be available to us as a PDF, I assume?
Yes, so it's uploaded
Uh-huh.
on Williston2050.com.
Okay.
The most relevant pages, if you want them printed out, would be the open-ended survey responses, so that 56 pages, and it's probably like a little over 60 if you want the Parket cards and Post-its where, you know, we typed them up and formatted them into easy read tables. Oh, my screen's not sharing. So if you go to Williston2050.com, you can see the engagement insight reports page. All those appendices are merged into one, but we'll work on getting them up there individually. And then we can also share the Excel. So Jamel from North Star was the one who did the tabulating all those roundtable idea boards, and his typed up analysis where he got to those percentages. We'll make that available. The one that shared, the Excel table that's shared in the OneDrive folder we've been working out of, it's called open-ended survey responses, and I'm going to rename that Excel because it's Andrew's open-ended survey responses, but I've added all of my tables analyzing the other survey questions. So it's like, and then there's like the stylistic versions versus the
It's a lot.
real numbers. So there's like
It's a lot.
60 sheets in there now. Yeah, it's a lot.
I downloaded the appendices this afternoon, and it was 190 gigs and didn't take too long.
Yeah, the one I put up on Friday was like mega massive. Like the roundtable idea boards was originally like 467,000 kilobytes, and my computer could not reduce it on Friday. And now the one that's included in there is 100. So we've shaved off some 100,000 kilobytes, but I think I can still reduce it down more if my processor will let me. Yeah, so if you want, we could go through another section.
I'm good with what I saw. I mean, that was really helpful. Amazing work, all of you. I mean, seriously, this was a grind, I can tell.
It's so awesome though to have it like this. I mean, there was so much work done by everyone, but obviously mainly staff on getting all of this incredible engagement. And I think, Emily, you made a comment about maybe this will just sit on a shelf and gather dust in the appendices of the town plan, but the purpose of the engagement and the purpose of having a report that's digestible like this is that we actually use it to build the plan, and having it in this manner will make that possible. So I really agree. I think it's incredibly helpful.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's gonna give us something to shoot for 8 years from now when we do this again. Depending on the size of the rewrite that happens at that point, and there is a decision that can be made about that, but. Looking at all of the people pictures here, across our roundtable events and our pop-ups and other things. I do recall pulling up at some point, I think it's the 1990 or the 1985 town plan, and there's a handful of photographs of people meeting, in the big room next door where there's a fair number of people there. I mean, it reminds you that this is something the town has done for a long time, and that it's important. And I think there's enough here for the planning commission to be confident that there was a really vigorous effort made to bring people into this process, and that a lot of people did participate. None of that means someone won't show up at the very last select board hearing, and either say they had no idea any of this was going on, or that it's completely wrong and we must have missed everybody's opinion. And, you know, this is a useful tool, even when you get to that point, you say, no, you know, we really made the appropriate effort to get people out, and we really did listen to and base our decisions on what we heard. And, you know, it serves that purpose really well. And, you know, we're trying to write, we hope, a pretty concise town plan, but with some pretty, you know, strong statements about what the town aspires to do over the life of that plan. And this becomes another layer you get to go back to and say, well, you know, why are we talking about a bicycle pedestrian facility that we need to float a big bond to pay for, and we're gonna have to tax ourselves for? Or why are we talking about allocating energy to this rather than that? And, you know, comprehensive plans are a lot about that long-term consistency. Going back to what you saw in the economy section, the valuing of and desire for more opportunity for small and local business. So that can be, you know, sort of a guiding star of when, you know, the person comes from out of town with the big shiny whatever that's really big, but really shiny, and a lot of people want it. And you can say, well, let's take a breath and let's read that town plan again. And gee, we really have to change some things this plan says if we were going to accommodate that. And it helps places not be too reactive to things as they change or as things show up. And you know, Williston's had that in its history before. And you know, sometimes I think had to have those debates about should we say yes or no to Maple Tree Place or Pyramid Mall or Walmart or whatever it was, without the benefit of having really thought it through ahead of time. And it's a lot harder when it's, you know, there's a development review or a rezoning that's grinding forward in process, and you've got a bunch of citizens saying, wait a minute, we never really talked about this. And that's definitely part of Williston's, you know, history around this. Yeah, so, yeah, don't be afraid to fall back on it as we keep working.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
Yeah, we can answer more questions. We can, over the next week or so, take, especially small grammatical edits and changes. Chapin, happy to get those from you on email, and, otherwise, and I'd like some help. I think we're gonna get it just by dividing that sentence under the livable line, but, the need for that broader acknowledgement, I think, is coming soon. Love to work on that too.
I emailed Emily already.
Perfect.
Cool, great, yay.
I mean, I would also add to that, the need for some acknowledgement of the ways in which planning of the past really served to institutionalize inequities and reinforce inequities.
I think,
And how, you know,
and I think we can call out some specific Williston
yeah,
examples, and that might expand the equitable line where I linked it to the APA Equity and Planning Guide. But if no one ever, you know, goes there, I think, yeah.
yeah.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, so when they did the public process around the reform of the state designations program in the fall, they did a triple acknowledgement at the beginning of that morning. And it was a sort of a more traditional land acknowledgement. It was an acknowledgement of the past inequities perpetuated by planning.
Yeah, that's where I heard it.
Yeah.
That's, I knew I had heard
And
it somewhere.
the third one was an acknowledgement that the climate is changing and that it's
Yeah.
affecting what we're doing,
Mhm.
and what we need to plan
Right, so
for.
that's in resilient. I mean,
There you go. We stole it from Rebecca Stone. But I actually, I felt in that process, that was one of the better introductory acknowledgement things I had participated in, where it felt like, hey, we're here to do something and we're here to do it while keeping these in mind. And, you know, I had with me at a meeting a couple meetings ago, this thing I had done as a staff retreat exercise a bunch of years ago, where I wrote a pretend front page of this town plan with this sort of introductory statement. And then a question to the staff of like, what kind of town plan would you write if this was what the cover sheet said? And one of the statements on that cover sheet was, there's some things about Williston, I'm really paraphrasing here, that we all really like and care about and want to still have. And if that's something we want, we're gonna have to change what we're doing. So even if you just want everything to stay the same, and what that means to you is the things I like are still around and available. You can't just do the same thing for the next 10 years or beyond and expect that to be the case. If you want there to be open space in a working landscape, that's a different challenge today than it was, you know, 30 years ago in Williston, just the dollar cost of it. If you want to build a bike path, it costs twice as much to do that today as it did 4 years ago. You know, so you have to change just to get the same things you've always wanted.
Yeah.
And I think that's, worth acknowledging. And you know, that, again, I've expected for a while that this plan may call for some somewhat, you know, challenging things for the town to do some challenging things, and being able to say like, you know, that really, was it the bike path one that was the 66%, or was that the?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. We should have more of those. They're not cheap.
Yeah.
You know, but they're achievable. And it's not just like they're not cheap to build, they're not cheap to have the kind of programming in town that gets them built, whether that's more creative financing, or it's more project management happening at the town level. It's different than just presenting developers with your list of demands and hoping that what they build for you connects eventually. Which is a lot of what, we've been really fortunate to get a lot that way, but that's kind of, if you map that out, the opportunities to get it that way are starting to dwindle. So acknowledging those kind of things, I think, is important to do as well.
Well, and even that model of saying what you want and expecting, you know, and writing it into development plans is perpetuating inequities, right? Because that, you know, it means that places that are getting developed and are newer are going to be more likely to have sidewalks and have XYZ amenities and all those things. So, so calling that out then makes taxing ourselves to build a bike path in a place where there is no new development an equity issue, right? It makes it an equitable choice to do that, to take that action, right? And, but I don't, like, people don't necessarily think in that way. And so that's a great kind of approach that we can help explain in the town plan, things like that, that you know, kind of fleshing out Melinda's comment about, you know, the past practices, even present practices are reinforcing inequities.
Well, I mean, you know, we had that practice of requiring new subdivisions to build private park and playground facilities.
That's another great example.
Yeah.
Stated as, so that the town will not have to pay to create and maintain these
Yeah.
things, but what do you end up with?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, rich subdivision playground, poor subdivision playground. Or as one person in a subdivision in Williston that shall not be named said one night at a meeting about a subdivision adjacent, those kids are gonna come over and play on our playground. And I thought, gosh, I think there's some black and white photos from 1961 I've seen that kind of fit that comment, you know, like,
No kidding.
that's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that shows you it's not in the past, right? I mean,
No.
those
No.
attitudes are still here.
Yeah.
And we need to address them and.
No, I mean, witness the school budget front porch forum debate about renters not paying taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
Cyclists don't pay either
Yeah,
for
no,
their roads.
no.
Illiteracy and the inability to do research is such a sad thing.
Well, and it means sometimes in a document like this that you have to be a little more forceful than you might think and say like, this is an equity issue. The way we've been doing this has perpetuated an inequity. We've been requiring sidewalks on both sides of new residential streets for about 15 years, but we didn't always, and we have some, you know, fairly dense residential areas with no sidewalks on either sides of their streets, and no real plan to put sidewalks there, or maybe even just to go into that neighborhood and say, is that something you folks would want? You know, what would, you know, the distribution of where our public lands are is not really aligned with where our people are. That's another good example, so.
But I think that this, like, all the responses here also gave us like thoughts on how to best move forward, like when doing these things, it's like, oh, 60% said they'd be willing to pay more to have paths. And not that like, in another area, like there was less willingness, say in
Mhm.
affordable housing, because I think sense is like the developers is gonna get money for this or whatever, but like. But like when we look at the budgets that failed, right, like the town budget and the school budget, there was no, it's harder for people to conceptualize like, oh, this is what I am paying for, but like school buses. That's easy for people to conceptualize. Yeah, kids need school buses, right? Whereas like, so when we think about how are we going to fund these things, it's not something that we can start like, I think a while ago, we're like, well, let's start putting into a fund, but like, I think we're seeing that that's not gonna work. Like the town needs to know, this is what I'm voting on. It's this path here. And we said we wanted it a long time ago. And, you know, so just as terms of we thinking about like what's possible, it seems like that's kind of like these percentages give some indicators of that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, you know, when we think about, you know, for an example of the failed bond around fire suppression for the brick church. Well, of course, we don't want the brick church to burn down, and that's part of it. But we also want to get on a path to making that building more usable and more relevant, because our village master plan says that the town plays this really important stewardship role in the village by owning and using this real core area of historic buildings. Like it fits into all these other things that people have told us are important to them. And sometimes, you know, even when we were talking about the town hall parking lot, the other failed bond, yeah, we want a better parking lot that people don't slip and fall in, anymore. But also we want a place where people from the community can park so that we're not requiring every new business in the village to come in and build its own parking lot. And that's a value of, we want businesses in the village, but we don't want the big parking lots that often come with them. It ties into that, and you know, being able, sometimes you have to remind everybody, like, this is connected to a bunch of different stuff, right? That's what your town plan should do. So.
Everyone, I'm sorry. I thought Jill was gonna chair, and I only just saw the email that said she wasn't in the room, so I.
Okay, Ellie's on it.
okay, Ellie, yep.
Ellie's got it covered, I figured, but I just wanted to say, so sorry. about that. Thank you, Ellie.
So, make a call and move on to the next topic, or this is the only topic tonight?
This is all we've got for tonight. We really just wanted mostly to make sure everybody had a good feeling on how to use the information, and the clarifying questions about how it's organized or where stuff came from is really helpful in that. And then pretty soon we'll get these couple of edits made, and then we're gonna kind of shout it from the rooftops. And you know, that emailing back to everyone who participated might be kind of interesting to see if any of them say, well, that's not what I said, or I'm surprised that other people said the same thing I said, or, you know, see if we can get a little bit of dialogue there, and, you know, remind that group of participants that this is an ongoing process. You're still gonna see us doing some engagement stuff. We'll do some at Town Fair. We've got it's a rec sponsored event in May.
Yep.
I think we might make a giant postcard from the future that kids can paint on That's an idea. Not sure yet. And, you know, we,
It was involved, but I'm here for it.
well, you have the yellow. I don't think we have that, they have that color at Home Depot in 4x8, so, you know. Um, We can make chili, we can paint plywood. But, you know, reminding folks that engagement is not just sort of closed at this point, but there's still a lot of time. You know, and there will be a point where we've got these kind of galley drafts of these sections up and available for viewing live as we continue to work on them and edit them, encourage people to track that and,
Mhm. Yeah, that's a
you know.
good point. When I roll out the public engagement report, I'm also gonna create a landing page for our town plan task forces, so it'll have like Team Red with your names. And then people can view our working documents and all their unformatted and garbled glory, but over time they'll get a little bit nicer. So remember that those documents will be going live. And the intent is that people can watch our progress, and then later this summer we'll get into more refined outreach around, hey, the planning commission's talking about X chapter, X topic, kind of thing.
That's great.
Should I
Hey.
share?
We had a really great, or we just said Chapin and Andrew and I had a meeting today and like set up recurring meetings, so get ourselves organized there. But we had question, which was, we felt we might be helped by a couple more internal deadlines, and I do apologize if we'd already set those, but if we could just, sort of, doesn't have to be right now on the spot, but do some sort of, what do you want the small groups to have?
So we've got, Melinda was talking about this earlier, kind of a really big window there, May to July 24. Of task forces bringing drafts back to talk about, at the broader planning commission. I think one idea I heard was if each team could get one of their sections ready to go by the beginning of May, that would give us as a group some stuff to get started on and then roll into your next one and your next one. So in our groups, we might each pick like one that we say, hey, we've been putting some effort into this. I think we can get this written up and get it where it's ready for a discussion with the group. So we can do that work over the summer and present something to the select board in the fall.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks Melinda for making that. Emily and I were looking today at the history of the current town plan. And there's this sort of like a planning commission hearing and adoption of the plan transmittal to the select board in, I don't know, was it like January? And then the select board takes it up and they hold a hearing. They close the hearing. And then they talked about the plan for like 6.5 months.
Oh, my God.
And then they held another hearing.
Yeah,
And then they adopted it.
November 15th, December 6th, 2016. The select board didn't see it until April 11th or thereabouts, thinking about budget cycle and
Town
town meeting. So it was after all that. And then the second hearing where they adopted it was August 2017. So it'll be a much different structure this time.
Yeah.
I thought that, didn't the last time, didn't they go chapter by chapter?
They did.
Yeah.
So they did a chapter or two per meeting over a pretty long time. And, you know, we might mirror some of that longer time frame, but my proposal would be we do that with the drafts we get to by the end of this summer. And we're not in a hearing mode, we're in a, hey, here's the text of this chapter, here's the implementation items, please give us feedback. We'll bring something back to you that takes that feedback on board as a public hearing with plenty of runway for the select board to spend, you know, spring, summer of 25 until they're comfortable warning that hearing. And that really the public hearing is the planning commission has worked on this draft, the staff has worked on this draft, the select board has worked on this draft. Here it is, public. Last chance to tell us, you know, that there's something you want changed here. And keeping the public along for that ride the whole time, again, hopefully really limits the number of folks who show up at that last select board hearing and say, you didn't listen to me and I never heard about this and you're all, you know, it's all wrong. And you have a lot of materials, including this report, to remind you that there's a big heavy foundation, to what goes into the plan. So, yeah, it was a little scary to see that 2016 schedule and go, they took 6 months to, in hearing, why? But that schedule, you know, it is, like Emily said, you know, you hand the select board something in January, they're finishing their budget process, they roll into town meeting, maybe there's new select board meetings. First meeting in, second meeting in March, first meeting in April is just like an organizational meeting at that point. Hopefully the budget passed and you're done with it, but maybe it didn't, and you're having budget meetings in the spring, and, yeah, so
Makes me really nervous.
you know, so here we are, like basically a year and a half away from the adoption deadline, but it's already feeling a little crunchy.
Yeah.
There's a way to say,
Just the way it goes.
this is.
Good.
Oh, it's 40%, 41%.
Yeah, so mirror that for that.
Right.
Sounds good to me.
We all good?
All right.
Motion to adjourn?
8:30.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you guys, and thank you, Ellie, again.
Ellie, would you wanna meet in person to like? Oh, yeah, like, yeah, so like.